So we'll read the gospel together, those who have the same translation. The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you, Lord.
Jesus said to his disciples, "The kingdom of heaven is like a landowner going out at daybreak to hire workers for his vineyard. He made agreement with the workers for 1 denarius a day and sent them to his vineyard. Going out about the 3rd hour, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace and said to them, 'You go to my vineyard too, and I will give you a fair wage.' So they went. And about the 6th hour, and again about the 9th hour, he went out and did the same. Then about the 11th hour, he went out and found men standing around. And he said to them, 'Why have you been standing there idle all day?' 'Because no one has hired us,' they answered. He said to them, 'You go into my vineyard too.' In the evening, the owner of the vineyard said to his bailiff, 'Call the workers and pay them their wages, starting with the last arrivals and ending with the first.' So those who were hired at about the 11th hour came forward and received 1 denarius each. When the first came, they expected to get more, but they too received 1 denarius each. They took it, but grumbled at the landowner. The man who came last, they said, 'Have done only 1 hour, and you have treated them the same as us, though we have done a heavy day's work in all the heat.' He answered one of them and said, 'My friend, I am not being unjust to you. Did we not agree on 1 denarius? Take your earnings and go. I choose to pay the last comer as much as I pay you. Have I no right to do what I like with my own? Why be envious because I am generous? Thus the last will be first, and the first will be last.'" The good news of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
We're going to try this for the first time from a generous giver, so let us see how it will work. The only thing that it will restrict me. Maybe I need some restriction in my life. My dear friends, in the gospel today we see a landowner going out and seeing people idle at different times and send them, make an agreement with the first group, and then with the others another kind of agreement, and send each to work in the vineyard. This, in its fact, tells us something about the owner, that this owner is very generous in employing, and we have to understand the circumstances around that. In that, for the Jews, many of them were landless. The reason why is that because of the poverty many of them experienced, they had to give their land over for survival. This is quite true in the Jewish society, as I know that for me personally, when I was growing up in Canada, this was something that happened. In the 70s, we had some serious drought, and I show those who will remember, even Barbados had a drought, and no rain, very little water, no planting could be done. Things were real hard, and we had some crooks who actually got people to sign over their deed land in order that they will get provision so that they can eat. And this happened in those times, and it happened again before that. And the history records experience of people like that. So even in our own time, that has happened, much less to the time of Jesus. Now, in the time, even before Jesus, in the time of Moses, it was said that the land belonged to Yahweh. The land must not be sold. And if the land is sold, the land must be given back to the people after 49 or 50 years. That time is called the Jubilee year. Remember we celebrated Jubilee year a few years ago? We had a big celebration of the Jubilee year. The Jubilee means returning to the original people what belonged to them. And now we had a condition where land was not returned and people were living in real poverty and they had to give over. So that's the condition. Therefore, you have to force yourself to work with a landowner in order to earn some form of living. This is the condition. But the gospel also giving us another insight, and give the insight concerning speaking in a certain way about God. That God is the landowner, God owns the world, and he sends workers. So God makes himself available. He moves out and he goes out into the world and he searches. He searches for people, he finds them and he sends them. The first group, he said, what are you doing? What are you doing? Come and go walk in my vineyard and I'll pay you 1 denarius. And there was an agreement. And later on, something else happened. As he went on, right through the last hour, he found them and he sent them to work and he said, I will pay you a fair wage. Others, he didn't say anything to them, but just go and work. In repayment and in paying them for their job as a return, there seemed to be some injustice by God. And I think when you read the gospel, you will say, isn't God unfair? Now tell me something. Why would you want to work for a whole day in the heat? And then others will come in the last moment and be given the same money and the same payment that you are supposed to get. This is unfair. So there is a complaint about God being unfair or unjust. He has not done what is right. And I think this generally is something that is in the human that caused the human to rebel against God. There is a certain state of rebellion that human has within them from the beginning. Human beings, for instance, with Adam and Eve, when Satan said, or the serpent said, did God tell you this? And he said, well, God told us that, but the fruit in the middle of the garden we must not. And he said, oh, God is fooling you. God is fooling you. So we obey the serpent because it is better to have life than to obey God, who is the giver of life. So, and that kind of rebellion continues right throughout the scripture, where human beings complain. Look at Moses. They complain against God. They complain to Moses against God. Why did you bring us here to starve? And so on. Right into the New Testament, there's this already complaint that human beings rebel against the will of God. Now there's something that caused that rebellion. And that something can be found among us if we examine ourselves truly. We like good for ourselves. Human beings like to see good for themselves. But human beings do not always like to see good for others. If we find ourselves at a disadvantage and someone else find themselves in a better advantage, what do? We complain. We may not say anything to the person, but we may say to others. We have that state of rebellion against what is done for another. That rebellion is what we call pride. The gospel properly named it. Jesus said in the gospel, envy. What really is envy? Envy is wanting the good for yourself, what has happened to someone else. And you can do anything with envy, to either destroy the person or somehow try to get what the person has to satisfy your own self. Now, when the Old Testament or even the New Testament speak about envy, what it says is that you have an evil eye against your brother. An evil eye. You cast an evil eye. An evil eye means jealousy. And there was a writer named Dante. I just wanted to look at this. What does this look like to you? Huh?
Antenna, aerial.
Yeah, aerial, man. It almost looks like an aerial, but it could be used as an aerial. Oh Lord, I can't get up this thing. Fingernail weak. This is to protect me, right? Or anybody else. Well protected. So you know what this is, right? Oh Lord. You know what this is? Right. So you know this can be used for anything. Right. Whatever purpose you. A chair could be used for standing and it could be used for sitting. So let me try to use this for some other purpose. What's it look like here now?
A needle.
Who's a needle?
Me.
Who me? Oh, you, well, right. Well, you look like a needle. Well, come out here if you look like a needle. Why you come here? Anybody else say needle? If you come out, come on. Let me show you this. There was a man who wrote in a few centuries ago named Dante. And he was speaking about people in purgatory and what happened to people in purgatory. And he says, they cannot see. They cannot gaze to see the light. Why? Because of envy. He said envy envy prevents them from seeing the light. And he said, why? They find themselves in poverty, in purgatory, because their eyes has been sewed. God has sewn up their eyes with needle and wire. Look at the glasses. So to demonstrate, this is what it looks like. Oops.
Push it right in, Father.
Yeah, man. Push it in. See, Simon, you see the one you blind there? So this is good. Thank you.
They call that one envy.
Yeah. Give me a chance for me, please. Envy is sewing up our eyes from seeing the good in others. We don't want to see others better than ourselves, and therefore we do everything within our power to prevent them from progressing and prevent them from moving, even though we may be behind. Let me just show you a little example of that. When I was a few years well into the priesthood, we had a number of things happening in the diocese. And we had priests dying, us getting sick and so on. We have like Father Raphael. And many times, myself and Father Taylor will go to St. Dominic's to do the Mass. And there was a need for a priest. Now Father Taylor was out. He was not in a parish. And so was myself. I was a floating man. And having been a floating man, I felt that I would have been selected to go to St. Dominic's. Isn't that obvious?
Yeah.
Well, yes, it's obvious. I was not selected. Father Taylor was not. So how you think I'm going to feel? I don't know if it's envy I had, but I had a little bit of jealousy or something permeating. Hurt, yeah, hurt. And then Father Bishop say, well, he's going to bring Anton because Father Anton is his friend, he knows him. So I get real angry because I said, look, I in a parish for so long I just run in